welcome. Have a seat. Okay, same opening question that I asked earlier. Yeah. I know the LinkedIn profiles, maybe Wikipedia pages are impressive. What's on your Twitter account? What do you do? And what's your favorite kind of chocolate?
Ooh, difficult one. So I'll start with the chocolate. Love dark chocolate. And in terms of my profile, the non-LinkedIn version, tricky one. So I started sort of in the finance world, and then I recognized that the challenges that we are facing today are so significant. So I wanted to engage in a hybrid model of bringing finance and nature together, and found this incredible opportunity to join the organization I'm now working for, where we're really trying to bridge that gap and finding a way of reshaping the way we think about finance and nature.
I love that. So over 16 years in finance, and now you're the principal at NatureFinance?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my profile. Can you hear me?
Here we go.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my Twitter profile says I like being outdoors and I like food, but that doesn't really answer your question. So, yeah, no, I'm here as chair of Unearthodox, which exists to address these deep-rooted complex problems that exist with the relationship between nature and humans. And essentially what that means is that we spend a lot of time asking what the problem really is, framing that question, thinking how have we been far enough to think that we can start proposing solutions. And the way this links to the rest of my daily jobs is that the solutions often lie someplace between for-profit and not-for-profit, someplace between financial and purely philanthropic, and that's where these worlds sort of come together. And the idea of talking about what's missing when investors talk about nature is one that I dream of very often. Excellent. So far I have 0 questions from you guys, which is a dream for me because I love talking to our speakers. But if you've got a question, please drop it in. I also do a bit of investing, although I don't invest in the space that you invest in. Things that I think about for any average investment is risk and returns. Mm-hmm. What is that conversation in this space? I'm totally unfamiliar, so please tell me.
There's 2 ways of looking at it. And I think, first of all, in our very definition of risk, I think we have a very dated view of what risk is, because if you really bring nature into account, then the risk profile of your conventional assets and investments look very different. So we're not comparing likes for like. And then equally on the return side, it's really about the consistency and longevity of generating those returns. And again, if you don't take nature into account, then your profile looks very different. So I think we really need to use a new lens when we look at risk and return, accounting for nature into that.
And maybe on the personal level of your question, I think there's one serious paradox that investors need to confront themselves with, which is the question of why do they exist and why are they doing this? If you're investing in nature or for nature, as we heard earlier, you're deploying capital as a supporter of initiatives. You're not, and you cannot be, I think, entering into this discussion as a what society has conditioned investors to be framed as, which is as a rent seeker. The objective here is to generate value which is shared and which is comes in many different forms. And I think that's one of the big responsibilities of investors today, is to confront themselves with that.
We got questions. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Unscripted. You just had to respond. Here we go. What kind of returns can investors expect from investing in sustainable projects that prioritize nature conservation? 5x, 7x, 10x. I mean, these are the numbers I'm used to.
Yeah. So I think there's a stack, like with any other investment. So you have where you might have nature-based solutions that generate the majority of their income from carbon credits. So they engage in these projects to preserve or regenerate forests. That might have a sort of mid-teens return profile. So you're doing great for nature. You're providing the local communities with an income. But then on the very extreme side, you can have multiples. So we saw the companies presenting here today. Imagine when they take off, they really provide a way of making nature visible in the market. And you can just add numbers of multiples to that type of investment. So like with any other portfolio, it really depends on the risk and underlying investment.
And can I pick up on that word? I think it's a key word there is portfolio. I think in the last 10, 15 years, the growth of the impact investing space has focused very much on venture capital, where you can have these kind of crazy returns, which you've seen for software businesses. That's a flawed playing field, because you're only looking at tech solutions that can scale infinitely. There's one thing that we all know about the world, is that it isn't infinite, and so there's no reason to think that growth should be on this world. So looking at a portfolio level does allow you to look at different asset classes, and this moves you into the world of some started to call systemic investing, which is thinking, okay, what's my theory of change? What is it that I want to see in the world? And how is it that I, as an investor, can support initiatives from different backgrounds, from different, structured in different ways, probably with different return horizons and risk profiles, and to engage in investing in it through that lens has some promise of being a little bit more impactful than simply a venture capital fund that promises your usual 2 to 3 times return.
Are there opportunities? That's a question that's top voted here. Are there opportunities for individuals to participate in these investments for nature? Because both of you are representing entities that are investing, but can an individual do so, and how?
So there are a number of different ways of doing so. So there are, for instance, listed investment trusts in the UK where you can support some of these nature-based solutions, and the stock exchange there, LSE, is now providing a platform where one can directly invest in these nature-based solutions. But equally, there's a number of angel sort of investment communities and crowdfunding platforms where one can support the more VC-like types of investments into nature. So there are a number of different ways. And then I think most importantly, we can invest by sort of our consumption behavior and patterns. I think that's the strongest sort of way that consumers and individuals can direct capital and really direct corporates as well to promote nature.
Maybe just briefly on this one, I think we can also dispel that notion that investing in this, if we're talking about investing in nature, we're talking about investing in the creation of value. And that doesn't actually only take place through the professional investor. It takes place in, as you said, I think consumption is a very good example. There are many ways in which you can put your capital, whether that's financial capital or social capital, to work for nature. You could even argue that an investment that isn't for nature is an investment that's a very bad investment, because you're going to end up losing money in the short run.
I hate that we have a countdown clock that just keeps going in one direction. It never increases time. It just keeps decreasing. So I can squeeze in one more question. These are all so good. Okay, let's go with this one. How do we reconcile the challenge that nature investment risks are supported by the source of capital, but the return is shared by the global population? So there's a small cohort that has to bear the risks for the benefit of the many. How do you reconcile that? Doesn't need reconciling.
There you go. I don't know if I agree with that assumption. Yes, so it depends on how you look at it. Just take food, for instance. That is nature, and that impacts everyone. So if you look at biodiversity in form of the cost of reduced pollination, it has a massive impact, and indirectly it's linked to food prices, cost of production. So I think nature impacts everything and everyone.
I think that's what the question is saying. Yep. So, but it's saying that the investors are few, and they carry. So there's a startup out there, and you say, okay, I'll put the money in, but the benefit is for everybody. So does that have to be reconciled?
Well, I think that's a problem with capitalism more generally, which is one that we are dealing with here. If we're talking about systems change, right? We need to be talking about how can you invest in a way that benefits the users as well as the investors, which is, that's kind of the grounding of the stakeholder economy principle, right? Where we don't look for shareholders, we consider everybody as a citizen and as a stakeholder of the outcome. I think there are two things that investors can do to help minimize that that gap. Okay. One of them is to reframe the way they consider scale and what they consider success. The goal of a fund or an investor shouldn't be exponential growth. Something about redistribution there. We can have a long conversation about taxes. Then there's the other side of that, which is accepting greater complexity. And this ties into the whole conversation around monitoring. If the investor is able to accept that their returns are going to be measured in different ways, not just monetary, but also social, environmental, capital, then I think we're going to be able to create a world in which people feel more, society in general feels more engaged and more able to invest as an individual into a systems change.
Any other thoughts?
Sort of?
No, I agree.
Okay. So on that note, can we please say thank you to these wonderful individuals? Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Sharing the investor perspective
Can
on
we
this.
grab some chocolate?
Please have some chocolate. Yes.